I'd like to introduce you to Nate Spees. Nate is the CEO and co-founder of Grizzly. Grizzly is a creative agency that develops adventurous brand experiences that connects people and inspire action. Nate has also served as the pioneer for Creative Mornings, which is one of San Diego's largest networking groups pre-COVID. Nate is a serial entrepreneur, but more importantly, he's an awesome human. And I've had the privilege of knowing him for a few years now. And I'm excited for all of you to get to hear his story firsthand. So Nate will be sharing his story. You will have the opportunity to ask questions towards the end of the event. We ask that you enter your questions into the chat and I will moderate them on your behalf towards the end. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Nate. Nate, I think you have screen sharing powers now.
Cool.
So we'd like
awesome.
to do that. It's cool. But thanks, Nate.
Perfect. Well, thanks, Jenny. Hey, everybody. I'm super excited to be with you today. And in this virtual world we're living in, it's as close to being in person as we'll get for the time being. But really excited to share a little bit of my story with you. And I do have some slides, so I will pull that up. And my goal is to give you an overview of a little bit of my story as an entrepreneur. But then also, I think having done and facilitated a lot of talks, not only given them, but also just supported through Creative Mornings, I think 70 something talks. I think Q&A is where a lot of the great value comes from, just being able to talk with all of you. So I'll try to keep my part as brief as I can and make lots of room for us to talk through questions that you might have that are a little bit more tactical or practical as it relates to my journey. But with that, let me go ahead and share my screen. All right, can everybody see my screen? Perfect. Cool. Well, I am super thrilled that Jenny connected me with all of you, and what an awesome program to be a part of. The opportunity to, while in school, learn about launching a company and getting that real world experience of what that looks like. I would highly encourage you to check out internships and anything you can do to get your hands on that practical real world experience is so valuable, especially when you're in school. Learning everything alongside that, it's such a great benefit. Who am I? Well, I'm Nate, and I am 35. I've been out of college now for quite a while, but I am married. I live in Austin, Texas, actually now, and commute back to San Diego, where my primary office for Grizzly is located, and I have a 2-year-old. And so my world is full of lots of moving and shaking, but super thrilled to kind of just share the journey that I've been on over the past decade plus now, since getting out of college and experiencing that. But I thought I'd just start by sharing really what my values are as an individual, and that's service, creativity, adventure, and optimism. For me, everything I do is really built on trying to love others and trying to really build all of the businesses that I've had, all of the opportunities I've had, with the end in mind of leaving the world better than I found it. I believe in creativity. Obviously, a lot of my work, both as an entrepreneur and as a community organizer, has been around creativity. I believe that using your imagination to bring something new into the world is the great equalizer. It brings amazing opportunity for everybody. I believe in adventure. I think that taking risk is rewarded, and I am 100% confident that the glass is half full. So optimism is a way of life for me. Some days easier than others, but I think that when you're optimistic about what the future holds, you're able to navigate the hard days, and you're able to navigate each and everything that comes your way. So how did I get here? Well, it's not because I'm a creative genius. I'll tell you that right now. It has taken a whole lot of hard work through the years to be where I'm at today, and it's not ever as glamorous as it may feel. And I've always loved this analogy of what success looks like, because I think it's a testament to the fact that we're never done, and what you see perception wise is far often not reality for what people have experienced, and also just the dynamics at play in the entrepreneur's journey. And so today I'm excited to share a little bit about what that's been for me. So my whole life, I always wanted to be at the intersection of business and creativity. I grew up in a home with entrepreneurial type parents. They kind of became accidental entrepreneurs while I was in high school. I grew up with medical missionary parents that started their own private medical practice in Colorado Springs when I was in high school. My first foray into entrepreneurship was a landscaping / janitorial business that I started in high school. And that was really where I got the opportunity to see what it was like to build something with my own hands, literally from pavers to shrubs and everything in between. I did whatever I could to learn about business while I was in high school, knowing that at some point I just was so curious and wanted to learn what it would take to start a business later in my career. And that intersection of business and creativity also lent to having a best friend that was a designer. We had bootleg copies of Adobe back in high school, and we were building T-shirts for our basketball games and selling them to friends. And early on, I realized I probably wasn't going to be a designer, and I probably was going to have to find some other form of career in the creative world. And so I went on to college, got a marketing undergrad, and went on to get an MBA after that. But really wanted to pursue what marketing would look like. And one thing I would mention is that when I was in school, I had no idea what would come as far as where the opportunities would exist, what I'd start, what that would look like. But I knew that if I kept just focused on being curious and kept focused on what I wanted to see in my own career as far as just learning opportunities, that new things would come my way. And sure enough, as I entered the workforce during 2008 in a crazy recession, I got a job working for an education technology company in San Diego called Bridgepoint Education, and that was a hilarious twist and turn in the progression of what would become the career that I found myself in. I started in sales, worked my way into some admin jobs, worked my way into the marketing department. And while I was in the marketing department, I really had my first interaction with what we call ad agencies or creative agencies. I had never really interacted with it. All I knew about advertising was Mad Men was on TV back then. And I knew that someone somewhere had to be making advertisements. And it seemed like such a cool job. But I knew nothing about it. And I was fortunate that when I was working at Bridgepoint, I got put on a project where I interacted daily with people that worked at agencies. For me, it was my first interaction with folks that were sitting on the other side of the table. And I remember sitting in these meetings going, these people look like me, they talk like me, they think like me, they just happen to sit on the other side of the table. And I started to wonder if I could do that. I wonder if that would be something that I could do as a career. And as I continued to pursue that, I started asking questions. I started meeting with people that I knew locally. I started knocking on doors and asking people that were already in the industry, what would it take to work in an advertising agency? What would it take to work in a creative agency? And for many people, they kept saying, well, you need to have agency experience. And I said, well, how do I do that if I don't have agency experience? I work in a corporate world. How do I do that? And funny enough, it really got to the point where I realized I was at an intersection where I needed to figure out, how do I get agency experience? And how do I actually move into this new place? What I realized about the creative world was that it was something where I could use my imagination to solve real business challenges, and to do so in ways that were compelling and creative, and the outputs got to look different every single day. And so I actually left my life in the corporate world and risked everything to start a business with a business partner. And it was my first foray after college into entrepreneurship. And it was about 5 years after college, and it went miserably poorly. I failed miserably, and it was the best thing that could ever happen to me. We did that for about a year and a half and learned a lot about growing teams, learned a lot about business partnerships, learned a lot about sales, branding, marketing, and we did some great work. But my relationship with my partner and a lot of the things that the interpersonal dynamics of starting a business with other people that I didn't know about really were the undermined our long-term success with that effort. So eventually I left that. And the story I like to tell is that the day after everything kind of went sideways, I woke up the next morning and I realized I still had my arms and my legs, and I still had the ability to think cognitively. And I realized I'm going to do it again. Maybe not right away, but I knew that I would do this again. And that was in 2015. About a year later, I went on, worked at another agency because now I had some agency experience having started my own. And after that, I moved on to meeting my business partner, Greg, and we started a company called Grizzly. But before we go into that, I think one of the big learning points about entrepreneurship that I wanted to just make was that oftentimes when you're starting something or you're involved in something that's starting and it's new, there's this reality of it feels like staring into the abyss. And the reality of entrepreneurship is really it just gets easier to do it. It doesn't get any easier. The recognition that you're always staring into the abyss is something that you start to just get a little bit more resilient with as you get older and you get more attuned to the reality of it. And I don't say that to scare anybody, but it is a reality of when you're starting something new and you're using your imagination to bring something new into the world and attracting customers and attracting clients or whatever that might look like. There is this enormous weight of you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know what's on the other side of the unknown. And so there's a reality of just getting more resilient in doing that. And I'll share some of my anecdotes of what that's looked like in my life later on. But here's a picture of me in 2015 in our first Grizzly office. And I remember we had no idea what we were going to do or how this thing would grow, but we had a passion for creating experiences for our clients. Our hypothesis was if you had a long beard, nope, I just happen to have a really long beard. Our hypothesis was if you created experience that was positive and welcoming, clients would come back. And that was built off a reality of there's plenty of other agencies in the world providing services and creating and solving challenges for people, and the work output didn't seem that great. But we realized there had to be a reason why people were going back. And our hypothesis was if you create positive experiences, you'll keep clients and you'll continue to grow as an organization. And through the years, we've done just that. We've been able to do work in a myriad of different industries. We've had seasons where we've had 25 plus employees. We've had seasons where we've had less. And all of it has been a wonderful journey in exploring what it means to run a business and be an entrepreneur. As an organization, we've done tens of millions of dollars in business since we started almost 8 years ago now. And in doing so, that's been something where we've learned a ton of lessons around what does it look like to grow a healthy business? What does it look like to grow a profitable business? We, being in a services-based industry, didn't take startup money or had anything like that. And so there was a lot of things that we just had to learn while we were building the business. And in doing so, it was a lot of trial by fire as we brought a business to life and really tried to sustain it over the course of many ups and downs in cycles of clients, even in the last 18 months of having a global pandemic and what that would look like for organizations as well. There's been so many different things that we've tackled. But today, we are a hybrid creative company that guides brands onward. Our mission from day one has been to help organizations go from where they are today to where they belong in the marketplace. And believing that the way we do that really is by being a strategic partner. We believe and have built this entire company on this idea that if you want to tackle brand growth, you have to have the rigor of a strategic consultancy, the big idea creative thinking of a creative agency, and the craft of a content studio. And so a lot of the work that we do is built with that in mind. And Jenny mentioned that we like to talk about building adventurous brands. And for us, the company we've built has really been founded on this idea that if you have vision that's built off of your beliefs and you create belonging with your customers and you act bravely, you're able to really build an adventurous organization that is capturing new market share and going from there. And so our team is a multidisciplinary team of creative team members, from strategists to producers, designers, writers, and engineers. And we work with all types of organizations in helping them build their marketing programs, their products, as well as their ad campaigns, et cetera. Here's a couple of just examples of the type of work that we do. And I thought to kind of land it here, one of the things that's been so wild is that when we started this journey, we had no idea who we'd work with, what that would look like. And now looking back on where we've come, we've worked with some of the world's largest organizations. And we've done so by being true to our values as an organization and by being true to who we are as individuals, and believing that when we focused in on those things and focused in on delivering excellence and actually solving real challenges that that our clients were facing, that would be enough to really lead us into new territory. And it has. And I'll share one of my favorite pinch myself moments was a couple years ago. We were working engaged on a project with Microsoft, and I got to work with Xbox. And being a kind of nerdy closet gamer over here, I got to hang out with the general manager of Xbox Live and have lunch with him. And I remember sitting there going, as an entrepreneur, it was just such a crazy moment to know that what we believed was possible actually had come to fruition, and moments like those exist. And it was just a really neat kind of full circle moment. But I don't say that to brag, because then, after that, I haven't talked to that guy in a few years because he just kind of disappeared off the face of the earth. So again, it doesn't, but I remember for me, that was just this quintessential moment of, wow, I can't believe that this has actually happened. And it wasn't a moment where we were, sitting on stacks of cash and Scrooge McDucking into big piles of money. It was a moment where a belief that we had about what we thought was possible with the work that we wanted to bring into the world happened. And when it happened, it was a really, really cool defining moment. I actually don't know if this will work, because I don't think I have the ability to, you guys probably can't hear that, right? Oops.
Yeah, no audio.
No audio. So I'll let it play because it's a good example of our work. I can hear it. It's incredibly loud in my headphones. But this is just a good overview of our work. A lot of what we do as an organization is brand, digital, and content. And so a lot of brand strategy, brand development, a lot of web design, web development, and a lot of storytelling. And so we do a lot of ad campaign creative, ranging from hospitality to consumer goods to enterprise technology, and really everything in between. And so it's been a fun journey to get to where we are today. And it's been something where it's like a never-ending game of bigger and better, but without it always having to be bigger and better, but just having the opportunity to learn from every project that we've worked on, every client relationship that we've had that's been good, that's been challenging, that's been up and down. I think through all of that type of work, we've been fortunate to grow in our understanding of what it means to be an organization and what that looks like in the work that we do. And so the values that we run the organization with are living the adventure, loving the work, and leaving it better. And so really, as we make all the decisions as an organization, they all come back to, can we live and practice these beliefs in the work that we're doing? And this is something that I wrote down this morning because I was thinking about things that I wish I knew as an entrepreneur early in my career. And it was really, entrepreneurship is not about getting to a point where you get accolades for what you're doing. And it is definitely not the easiest way to make a lot of money. And if that's why you're doing it, it's definitely, it's going to be a really, really difficult road. And last but not least, you cannot do this for anyone but yourself. I think when you go through the process of being an entrepreneur, I reflect back over the seasons that I've had over the last 8 years. I can look back and go, man, there's been certain motivators that have been incredibly beneficial to get me into certain seasons of my life, but I've had to surrender them in that process. Because if you don't, what ends up happening is you'll get to these moments where you're like, why am I doing this? What is the point of what I'm doing? And I think that accolades, money, and anything else will not motivate you in those moments. And really the only thing that will is doing it for yourself, knowing deep down why you do what you do, and being willing to continue to come back to it and use that as the well for energy as you continue to move forward. And I think that has to do a lot with belief. You have to believe in yourself. you have to believe in your ideas, and you have to believe in the impact it'll have on the world around you. And I think that that's something where anytime I run into challenges or friction points in my own journey as an entrepreneur, I still consider myself extremely entrepreneurial. I go back to that belief system and check in on the gauges of my life and ask myself what's going on and where and what do I need to identify as an area to think a little bit more, ponder deeply about. So that's a little bit about my journey with Grizzly. The craziest thing was I got to be an entrepreneur on two fronts at the exact same time. I was starting this agency, and 100% think a lot of our growth has had to do with the community organizing work that we've done in San Diego simultaneously. For those of you who aren't familiar with Creative Mornings, it's part of a global network of breakfast networking events. There's over 215 of these globally. San Diego's claim to fame is that we're one of the top largest organizations globally. We have had over 30,000 people come to our event since we launched about 6 years ago. And I was the host of Creative Mornings all the way through December of 2020, and passed the baton at the end of the year to Ramel Wallace, who's now the host of San Diego's Creative Mornings. I'm super thrilled for him. And we have since day one believed that to really stem the tide of people leaving San Diego thinking it's not a creative city, the only way to transform that thinking was to build community where there's space and place for community to exist. Now, I don't know about you, I get super big FOMO when I look at all of these photos, mostly because we haven't seen that many people in the same space in a long time with everything going on in our world. But it was a phenomenal experience where the energy of people coming together just created such a unique and dynamic feeling and a dynamic place for everybody. And so, we started it because we really believed that serving our community was never going to be a bad idea. We knew that if you serve with no strings attached, the outcomes can be incredible. And one of the things that was really neat to us, and I'll remember the moment forever, was our first speaker in 2015. A week before our event said, "Oh, sorry, I double booked myself, so I'm not going to be able to speak the week that I plan to speak." And we thought, okay, well, I guess we'll just change the date and hope people show up. And our belief was if we could get 100 people to show up to our first event, that would have been a significant win. And our first event in January 2015 had 350 people at it. And that was really what lit a fire in our hearts as organizers to keep pursuing community building in San Diego, because we realized there's a significant need for space and place for the creative community to come together. And so we had everyone from designers to engineers to folks with Etsy businesses and agency executives, everybody in the room, all committed and there because they believed in the power of creativity to be transformative. And I think my reflection from my time with Creative Mornings was really just never underestimate what a team of people passionate about a cause can do. I think that when you are passionate about the work that you're doing, you cannot underestimate how far that will take you. That passion will drive you. But what will ultimately sustain you is being able to do that in a team setting. I think that individual passion will get you so far, but being able to be in community is what helps us on the days where we don't feel it, because there are plenty of days in the journey where you don't feel it. And I think that the shiny glitz and glamour of entrepreneurship can make it feel like you just have to feel it and grind it out, and all the time that if you don't feel it, you must be broken. But the reality is there's days where work is difficult and life is difficult and all the other variables of things that we're having to explore are difficult. So surrounding yourself with team members and community that you can turn to and say, hey, I don't have it all together today and I need a hand, is a really powerful thing to do. And I'd encourage you early in your career. I wish I would have learned that sooner. That took me probably the solid part of my 20s and into my 30s before I realized how valuable that was in life. And it took me learning the hard way in a lot of ways. Another thing that you may have already seen this. This has been circling the internet like crazy because of the pandemic, but I think that it's really interesting, and I think it's also true for entrepreneurship. I think we're taught to just grind out for salary and grind out for success as it relates to our title and our influence. But I think that as you think about your career, the future of our work is really the dashboard of life has a lot more on it than just how much money you make and what you do from a vocational standpoint. And so, again, another thing that took me a long time to understand was that in the dashboard of life, you have to also be concerned with your emotional, physical, spiritual, and relational well-being, not just your ability to do a lot of work. And I think that even as an entrepreneur over the last 10 years, there's been times in my life where I've realized I've really allowed different dynamics to suffer, whether that's my family life or my health or my emotional wellness or mental wellness or spiritual practices, whatever those might be for you in your life. I think it's good to have those indicators and make sure that you're checking back in with them. And that's one of the reasons why I have lots of coaches and mentors in my life that I check in with regularly to make sure that I'm not just thinking about what I can do for my business to grow, but also thinking about the fact that if I don't keep the wheels on the bus of who I am as Nate Spees, none of that will really matter. So definitely something I'd encourage you to be thinking about. And then I'll land a plane on this, and we can open up to questions. But I love this statement, and it's something that really drives a lot of my work, and it drives my future work, whatever the future looks like, with both continuing to grow our company Grizzly, but also many other creative ideas up here in the old noggin to think about as starting new projects and all that, both with Grizzly and beyond. Curiosity will conquer fear even more than bravery will. I think that remaining curious in your pursuit of whatever it is you do as an entrepreneur or in your career is curiosity will take you so far, because I think curiosity is what enables you to continue to take steps forward. The ability to want to uncover new ways of thinking, new opportunities to turn over rocks and understand how it works. It's an incredible tool to really help walk through each and every aspect of what it looks like to grow as an entrepreneur. And so if there's one strength and trait that continue to go back to, is we can never be too curious. And I think that a lot of our practices in our world actually can cause us to overemphasize in just knowledge and for the sake of knowledge, just trying to learn as much as possible. But I think curiosity is really the allowance of your brain to be open and nimble and flexible and look for new ways of doing things always. And so definitely something that I'd encourage you. I think that that's something I am in my own right now in this season of my life, really trying to re-engage in being curious and re-engage in the exploration of things that may not look like my normal day-to-day. Because one of the things that I found is that when you get to a certain point in your career and get to a certain point in your entrepreneurial journey, your highest and best and what is necessary for the organization may look different than why you started it. And when that happens, I think it's all the more reason to be curious and to think through, what does this mean for me? What does this mean for my future? And how do I ensure that I'm giving the best of myself to what I'm doing? So with that, I just want to say thanks so much. Super excited to answer questions and thrilled to get to share a little bit about my journey with you today.
Well, thank you so much, Nate. That was an awesome presentation. I hope your little one is helping you in the curiosity department.
Very much so.
Okay, so just a reminder, if anyone has any questions, please enter them into the chat. I'll read them aloud to Nate. But first off, I have a question for you, Nate. So we've got like 65 people on, probably a third of which are, starting their own companies.
Yep.
So they're in this process of figuring out their brands, of launching their social media accounts, really, starting to share their ideas with the world or their companies with the world. Do you have any like pieces of advice or tips as they embark on that journey?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. When you think about branding and you think about what branding at its core really is, I think branding is brand is the relationship that exists between an organization and people that come in contact with it. So it's incredibly dynamic. There's I use the analogy of a wall of 100 levers, and on one side of the wall's crumbling, and on the other side of the wall, you're having to build more wall and more levers. And so it's an ever-changing process. But I think that the thing that is most important when it comes to building a brand is being super clear on your purpose and your mission as an organization. Ensuring that as you're doing that, especially early stage, it's going to change, but you want to make sure that you have the flag, that you have that core purpose super dialed and super clear, so that as you engage in with customers or with clients or whatever type of business it is, you're able to get that feedback and then reflect back on, is that flag and is that kind of core brand purpose actually clear and connected back to what I'm doing. More tactically, I think 100% when you're moving into a new territory, you're starting a new brand, I think it's really important to look for comparators. I think it's important to get out there and say, are there competitors in my space already? If so, what do they look like? How are they communicating with their customers? What are they doing well? What are they not doing well? Are there any blue ocean opportunities where I can provide a solution that doesn't exist in my competitor set, et cetera? And I think that it's, there's that saying, steal from the best, but I think that there is a reality of look at what the competitive landscape looks like, see what people are already doing, and see if you can do incrementally better than that in how you're doing it. And that doesn't mean you have to spend a ton of money. It doesn't mean that day one it's going to look exactly like what you want it to look like, but there's lots of tools out there that can help really clarify brand in a meaningful way. And I don't have the link on me right now, but Jenny, I'll share it with you afterwards. There's a really cool tool from Harvard Business Review for like kind of brand positioning that is for building corporate brands, so for business brands. And I think that that's something that's a really easy to use, very simple tool, but it gives you an awesome framework for the foundation of what a brand is. And then again, from there, when it comes to the aesthetic of brand, all that, I think that's totally open to interpretation as far as how and what that would look like, depending on the the industry and all that type of stuff.
Okay, thanks for that. Yeah, Nate, I'll share that resource once you send
Cool.
it over. Okay, so heading over to the chat to get your questions answered. Mike and Veronica actually have somewhat similar question. We talked about this the other day, Nate, that Grizzly went through some challenges with the pandemic, and now you're in the process of bouncing back and
Yeah,
hiring a lot of people. Can you, share an update
sure.
about that
Yeah.
experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So, it actually our challenges and experience were pre-pandemic. So, to give you guys some business context, so we started this company with $0 and 0 cents, years ago, and progressively grew it into a multi-million-dollar company. And in 2017, going into 2018, we did almost $5 million in revenue. And while we were doing that, we grew dramatically. We went from having about 10 team members to having 25 team members full time, plus another 10 contractors working with us on top of that. And one of the challenges that we experienced when that happened was we didn't control the output of the work very well. So the work suffered. So our business is built on client services. So if the work suffers, then the likeliness of those clients coming back to us also suffers. And so we had an experience where we lost a key account. We lost an account that had generated over $2 million worth of revenue for us the year before. And when we lost that business, we had to lay some people off because we could no longer afford to keep everybody on salaried at the level that we were at. Now, during that same time, we realized though that the culture had been significantly impacted by trying to grow too fast. We lost sight of why we were doing it in the first place and felt like everyone had just gotten completely burned out and was completely confused about what the vision was for the organization anyway. And so in that process of kind of learning from what I'd say was one of our big learning opportunities and one of the challenges that we experienced was my business partner Greg and I decided to actually make the team, to downsize the team even more, to right size for where we were at, for the type of work that we wanted to do, and to ensure that as we move forward, we had reset the vision, reset our kind of belief in what we were wanting to accomplish as an organization, and really focused our efforts on growing the right way. And so that exploration was not just work output, that was also our kind of values, like I mentioned. It was also looking at our operational activity and our processes around how we ran the business, and realizing we were de-emphasizing the business aspects and overemphasizing the creative delivery, and in that process had not been as profitable as we should have been. And so again, all of those things really were stuff that we learned through 2019. And so going into 2020, when COVID hit, we had already kind of downsized the team to a manageable amount of people for seeing revenue decrease. And so we were really fortunate that we didn't have to do anything crazy during COVID to, like cut half our staff or furlough anybody. We were able to pay everybody's salaries and everything through the year. But what we did was we kept building. So all of last year, we focused on things internal that we knew would be valuable for this year. We focused on crafting a whole lot more case studies. We focused on, again, making sure that the operational efficiencies were in place, and focused on really the end of year, knowing that a lot of organizations going into 2021 would need to up their marketing spend again. It would need to start having things look a little bit more like they did pre-pandemic, because it was going to keep going on. So thankfully, that's how we navigated it. It was not easy. Last year was incredibly stressful. We 100% didn't hit the planned goals that we had from a revenue perspective, but we were really fortunate that we didn't lose so much money that it was unsalvageable or anything like that. It was we were able to keep things pretty svelte last year, and in doing so, kept our operations costs down. So going into this year, we've already hit our goal for Q1, which is awesome, and we're on pace for what we want to see as from a revenue perspective for the year. So really excited about that. I think that that's thrilling. Going back to that abyss photo that I showed you, I think when you've navigated things like COVID, there is definitely a challenge in any entrepreneur's business of going, what's next? And so I think that you have to eliminate the fear. You can't eliminate fear, but you have to be willing to say, again, going back to being optimistic, I think you have to be willing to say, hey, we don't know what's coming, but we know that we've put in a lot of work to get us to where we are today. And let's keep putting in the reps and see what happens. And I think that that's oftentimes the best scenario for navigating the uncertainty of times. And again, everything about the last year has been uncertain, that's for sure.
And part of the upside is you're also hiring for 6 positions right now.
We are. Yep. So we're hiring for 6 roles right now. And one of the big decisions we made last year was the way our team works is multidisciplinary. So a lot of the team members have a core specialty, but also support other aspects of the work that we do in brand, digital, and content. So we repositioned. We at one point had a lot of junior roles, but not a lot of middle management to support more junior roles. And what was happening was people that were in those roles looking for more mentorship and leadership were getting kind of left out to dry because they felt like they didn't have access to any of that. So what we've been focusing on is building a strong foundation of senior team members and senior talent so that we can actually re-engage in a recruiting strategy around hiring people more fresh out of school and incorporating them into our workforce. And so that's really where we're at in that life cycle, is still in the engaging in more senior team members to make sure that we have the right leadership to be able to do that. And then as we do that, our goal is to re-engage our internship program, re-engage our new vocation opportunities and go from there.
Awesome. Okay, so next question is from Gwen. How did you overcome your first big failure and find new motivation to push forward?
That's a great question, Gwen. So my first big failure was my first business. I lost I think $100,000 of real money and was in a ton of debt afterwards. And I don't say that in a braggadocious way. It just really sucked. Like, it was not fun, and it was incredibly stressful. I had left a corporate job where I made great money to take a 70% pay cut, and was still living like I was making the other money and investing in this business. And then when my business partner and I decided to go different directions, I was kind of left holding the bag going, wait, what am I supposed to do now? And overcoming that took time. It would be completely false to suggest that it was something where, I did wake up the next day after quitting and realized I could do it again. But it took months of to kind of walk through the emotional and mental hurdles of like not being bitter, not being frustrated, and not feeling a ton of imposter syndrome and insecurity around what had happened. And it took years to pay off a lot of the debt that was incurred by from doing that. When we started Grizzly, I was still paying off credit card bills from when I had started my first company. And so I think that from that perspective, it's not glamorous. Like it was not a glamorous process whatsoever. But I was committed to and had a belief that what we could accomplish was greater than what had been lost in and with my first company. And so I would also say I've been married. I got married super young, so I have to throw that. I got married at 24, so my wife has been part of my entrepreneurial journey since day one of my post college entrepreneurial journey. And so from that perspective, I think having that support system was of huge value for me because I'm a camaraderie oriented person. If left to my own lone buffalo tendencies, I'd probably get pretty discouraged and isolated and frustrated, and may not be able to rebound. But what was motivating to me in that moment was knowing that I had the support of my family, and I had a belief in what was possible with my next business, and was able to move things forward. And again, hard to do on your own. So having people around you that will help challenge you and encourage you is a huge benefit in that.
Thank you for sharing that, Nate. I feel like it's so important for everyone to hear that, to know like this is totally normal to experience and feel these things, and that a support system can make all the difference. So, thanks for sharing that. On the flip side of the question, Vanessa asked, what would you say is the best part of your job?
Oh man, I mean, the best part of my job is to get to work alongside some of the smartest people that I know. My business partner Greg is not only my business partner but a close friend of mine, and it's been really fun through the years having him manage the creative side of our business to watch what our team's capable of and the things that we've crafted for clients. Has been amazing to see what we've been able to accomplish and support. So I think that would be one of the biggest accomplishments. I think providing for my family and seeing, from a standpoint of wanting to serve my family, I think it's been neat to see how this business has been positive to us as a family and has been able to allow us to grow not only our family but our lifestyle and all that type of stuff. So I'd say that's another thing. Again, not we I mentioned earlier it's not about money, but I do think that those are things. Those There are benefits to growing a business and having the freedom and flexibility to determine how and what you want your lifestyle and business to look like. And so that's been a huge benefit to me. And last but not least, I'd say, those moments that I told you about of just being able to go, how in the world did we get here, are just really fun and exciting things. Like same type of scenario, getting to consult with Marriott in Hawaii on projects and things like that, where you're like, I'm flying to Hawaii to talk about branding with a beach resort. Like that's an amazingly fun moment, and definitely something that I don't take for granted at all. I think that those are absolute blessings, and each and every one of them is a moment where you need to savor it because you never know what's around the next bend.
Awesome. So, next question from Brenda. She asked, what key activities would you recommend entrepreneurs to invest their time in? So,
Great
maybe let's
question.
say in a leadership perspective.
Sure. I mean, I think it's highly dependent on the type of business that you're in or that you're starting. But I think that for leaders in businesses, I think that the things that can be incredibly beneficial. I can only speak to what it's been like for me, but I think that under having that dashboard of what are the defining what are the primary drivers of your business's success, whether that's customer acquisition, client acquisition, or whatever that might look like, and making some determinations of what are those things that I need to look at daily to ensure that the cadence of the business is healthy. And so for me, in my work, in my workflow, my kind of highest and best for the organization, a lot of it now is focused, years into this process has been focused on new business, leadership of the team, and just in managing our operational activity to ensure that there's again a healthy rhythm to how we're running this business, because it is a cash hungry machine that every month we need to be able to ensure that we've got the money and resources allocated to continue to sustain our growth. And so a lot of what my day-to-day looks like is just figuring out what, like, it's, I check in on a lot of the things related to those kind of different quadrants. So from business development to operations and to client services and to just general team leadership, and making sure I've checked in with our leadership team daily on whatever challenges that they're experiencing. Like real time scenario, like a real example is we had a designer that we contracted to do work on a project this last week that literally disappeared. He disappeared off the face of the planet. No one's heard from him. We hope he's okay, but he hasn't responded to emails, text, calls, or anything in 36 hours. Well, the challenge with that is we get paid to do work on timelines. And so if something like that happens, when that happened, the flag goes up and everyone's like pivoting to trying to solve for that type of thing. And so I get pulled into those types of activities as well. And the only reason we know about that and kind of have a plan for when that happens is that we keep an eye on all those impact points and go, hey, this is not a big deal yet, but it could be if we let it go too far, and work against that.
All right. Thanks, Nate. We have a question from one of the teams in our program. Navy asked, how often do you work with very, very small businesses? My company is just beginning the branding process and needs help.
Well, the honest answer is rarely are we working with micro-sized businesses. Generally, our clientele are spending upwards of 6 figures with us in the course of their first year. Normally, and a lot of that means that our kind of spectrum is from funded startups all the way through to Fortune 100s, and ranging across enterprise, consumer technology, hospitality, and biotech and life sciences. But I would absolutely, if you have a question about that, Jenny has my email and can share it, and I'm happy to email you back if you have specific questions on brand or anything like that. And I would also say, actually, one other point I'd make, when you're an early stage company, I think there are plenty of tools to get you to a good phase one of your brand identity. And I think that from a verbal, like, messaging positioning standpoint, I think that there's plenty of ways to just figure that out on your own. I think only when the only time to really start to invest in that is when you start to see a dip in your ability to generate new customers, because maybe your brand's not up to the level of competition. So again, it's highly dependent on industry, highly dependent on if it's a consumer-facing brand or not. I think if you're in the entrepreneurship program, another thing is figuring out who's in the design program and wants to figure out, start building logos for people and all that type of stuff, and just start making those collaborative moments happen. We had a designer on our team that designed the new packaging for a kombucha hard alcohol company, and that her brand now is like everywhere, because they are in every store and across the country. And she just did it because she wanted an opportunity to be involved in something that was going to scale like that. And so I think there's plenty of stuff like that where you can get creative about how you approach it.
Awesome. Okay, so we've got time for 2 more questions. First one from David. When it comes to creative, does Grizzly work with an in-house production team, or do you outsource to freelancers?
Great question. Both. We do have in-house production capabilities, and then we outsource if and when it's necessary, based on timeline and based on scope and scale of the engagement. So sometimes if we're doing a global ad campaign, that's generally a studio set, and it's multiple days in a large studio with 100 people on set. In that type of environment, we normally are bringing in additional support to execute that type of thing. But we do have our own content studio internally.
Awesome. And last question from Max. What books do you recommend reading for young entrepreneurs?
That's another thing I didn't mention, but I should have. I love reading. And I think it's one of the great advantages of being an entrepreneur is spending time learning as much as possible and making that part of the disciplines that you don't stop doing. Lots of books. I think that's one where I might need to follow up with Jen. If you saw my bookshelf, it's like hundreds of books. So but I think that one in particular, one guy that I think for entrepreneurs is great to follow is a guy named Mike Michalowicz. It is way too hard to spell, so he actually has a different domain. It's Mike Mike motorbike.com, and it'll take you to his books. But I just found out about this guy, well, second half of last year, and I've been just eating up the books that he's written because I think they're written extremely easy to follow and engage with. Highly recommended. Check him out. Mike Michalowicz, hardest last name to spell. But I'll share it in the I can share it in the chat.
All good. All right. Well, Nate, that wraps up our questions. I just want to thank you so much for your time and sharing your story so candidly. We really appreciate it.